Jeff, are you seriously having them read Heidegger in an introduction to philosophy class? Yes, I am. Well, then surely you can't do it when you have to teach online or through video, right? Well, I'm going to keep trying. Now, if you watched the video about why you should study philosophy, you saw that philosophy does incredibly well in teaching a number of skills, right? Better on average than every other subject. Well, I think this is one of the main reasons. One of the main reasons is because we deal with really difficult ideas and readings. What is the best way to increase intelligence just generally? Reading, writing, and talking about difficult reading and ideas. You will find that most other subjects aren't having you read the original works of the theorists. They're having you read a textbook summary. Well, philosophy is known to have primary texts like this. And so, right, this is why we do so well, I believe, at teaching so many different skills, because we get to this basic difficult skill. Is Heidegger incredibly hard? Yes, right? You should have read it and started answering the reading questions before watching this video. That's the best way to get the most out of this class. And if you tried reading that, you will see, aren't you glad I gave you the warning on the website that this is the toughest reading we'll have by far, the toughest thing you've probably ever tried to read. So, let's introduce this, and what I need to do is I'm going to take a little while just to get us ready to read this reading. So I'm going to go through a bunch of metaphors, a couple demonstrations, so that we are prepared to read, and we'll have a lot of metaphors that I can refer to as we start reading. First, big, huge disclaimer, I have to explain why he wrote so strange. He is not necessarily a terrible writer, but it's clear that he is not trying to be obviously understood. Here is why. Let me explain this in two different things. First, his overall project and why he wrote this way. His overall project is Heidegger thinks that we have forgotten being since Plato. That's the weirdest sentence. You've now read Plato's Cave, and so you know that Plato is trying to say that a lot of our problems in knowing things and being deceived, some of them are our fault, but a lot of them are just the fault of the world. It's a metaphysical problem that the physical world is not that trustworthy. It's constantly changing. Well, for Heidegger, now the blame is completely on us. This is more of an epistemological problem. It's a problem with how we see the world and how we deceive ourselves. Heidegger is saying that the long history of thought since Plato has just been trapped in the idea that Plato gave us about what being is. This is the normal way we think. In fact, a really famous philosopher named Whitehead said that philosophy is just a series of footnotes on Plato. Because the whole agenda of our thinking in almost any subject is really talking about the problems that Plato brought up, either agreeing with them or disagreeing with them or coming up with different answers. Well, Heidegger's idea is that the early philosophers like Thales, Thales that fell into the pit, they were actually looking at the world for what it was and trying to see why things are. Not just why they exist, but how they appear to us. Well, ever since Plato, Heidegger is saying we've forgotten that. Back in the old days of pre-Socratic philosophy, notice that means before Socrates, there were philosophers like Heraclitus and Parmenides who were really trying to see what is there. Now we've lost that. Okay, so here, why did he write this way? Heidegger realized that if he wrote in his ordinary way, people would be mistaking him for just another one of the discussions about Plato. He wanted us to see something before that, and so he had to write in a new way, so we wouldn't just assume we know what he's talking about. Let me explain it with an analogy. One of the hardest things for me to teach, and I don't teach it very often, but sometimes I'll teach some philosophy of science. And one of the best readings in philosophy of science is by Thomas Kuhn, and it's called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. This book is incredibly hard to teach, not because it's hard to read, it's not. In fact, it's hard to teach because it is so easy to read because it's easily misunderstood. Here's the problem. When I give students a Kuhn reading, they read it and they hear the scientific method and they say, oh yes, this is how science works. But that is not what Kuhn is saying at all. He is trying to say science is not what you think it is. Normal science isn't tested hypotheses. Normal science is the kinds of things you'll learn from Heidegger. Normal science is mostly taken for granted. People aren't trying to disprove theories, they're trying to prove them. And so normal science is like our everyday lives, as Heidegger will show us, mostly in the dark, like in the cave. But it's hard to teach students this because when they read Kuhn, they say, oh yeah, I already understand science, so I understand Kuhn. No. Well, Heidegger is preventing that problem by not being easily understood. He is creating a new sort of language. Now, if you'll notice, the language is built out of simple words, but he's crammed them together, stapled them together in a way that makes them seem to make no sense. This is because if he wrote in the ordinary way, you would have said, oh, this is more science, this is more Plato, and not have understood that he was trying to show you something different about how the world appears. All right, now it's still really hard to read, but hopefully that makes you appreciate it, because I am glad that he wrote in this way, because it makes it a lot easier to teach, because instead of assuming you know what's happening, you don't get it until you actually get what he is trying to say. So you'll see what he's trying to see, and it will be like a light bulb moment where all of a sudden, oh, I understand the language, or at least I understand it a bit, enough to see what he's trying to show us. All right, there. I hope that's a good enough excuse. So let's do a number of little exercises to get ready to actually start reading the text. With Plato, I know that I didn't have to read the text to you because after I explain the story, you will understand it fully. Your first reading of Plato, you probably got it for the most part. You understood the story. And then my video should have made it all perfectly clear when you go back to it, right? But when I teach Heidegger, I'm going to need to be reading some passages as we're talking, getting you used to how he writes, and really dissecting some key ideas in the text. So please have the Heidegger reading out if you could print it. If not, have it ready in a window if you're on computer, right? Or keep pausing and going back and forth looking at this if you're on a tablet or phone or something. Please keep looking at the text as I'm teaching. Pause the video, read it along with me. All right. So before we're ready to read, let's go through 3 metaphors. So demonstration number 1. I want you to pretend as you're listening to me that you're in a regular college classroom. Pretend as I'm saying these things right now, you're in a college classroom, nothing big, no big deal. But I want you to, in a second, I'm going to ask you to, what are the kinds of things that are appearing to you? What is a normal day in a class like as the teacher's teaching? So, just imagine yourself there, imagine where you'd be sitting in a room, imagine, right, who's next to you, right? Imagine what I would look like in front of a whiteboard in a classroom. All right. Now, take that span of time that you just experienced, so now stop, don't pay attention to new things, just listen to me, right? Now we're back in our virtual classroom like this. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions to see what would appear to you in a normal sort of a classroom setting. Now, of course, we could do this at your work, we could do this as a grocery store, at a movie theater, in any of your normal interactions. I'm just going to focus on a classroom, right? So we can have that as our shared imagery. So, in a normal set of, say I gave you like 20 seconds when I was doing that to pay attention, what sorts of things would appear to you? So, let's ask. In that time period, did your clothes appear to you? Would your clothes appear to you for any certain reason? Now, maybe, right, during that time I asked you to imagine that, maybe right there, because I made it a little weird, maybe your clothes got a little itchy or something. Well, if they did, pause the video and explain what appeared to you, right? Say why it appeared to you. For the vast majority of people, do your clothes appear to you? Of course they don't. Right? Now, we need to think about why, but let me continue. Did I appear to you? Did the teacher appear to you for any interesting reason? Now, maybe because I made the situation weird by saying for you to pay attention, maybe you started looking at me kind of objectively. Now, that's not normal, right? But ask yourself if I appeared to you for any special reason. Probably not. Your pen. Did your pen or your pencil, or maybe you're just on a keyboard right now, did that appear to you Would that normally appear to you while you're in a classroom? No, right? I mean, I could imagine that maybe you started twiddling it in your fingers because I was boring you by telling you to pay attention, right? That's really odd. Now, maybe you started messing with it in your fingers, maybe even looked at it, right? If you did, weird, right? That's not normal. Now, let's go bigger. Does your car appear to you while you're in a regular classroom? Does the clock appear to you while you're in a regular sort of event? Do the students behind you appear to you? Now, let me underscore this one. Is it normal for us to think about the students behind us or on the other side of the room while we're in a regular classroom? No, right? We're trying to figure out what the teacher's saying. I made it really weird, and so your attention is right there. Your attention is, what do I write? This is weird, right? What a weird experience. Now, of course, you're going to have these experiences all the time because this is a philosophy class. I'm going to be talking about weird things, but keep paying attention to as we're talking. Try to imagine what appears to you. What are you thinking about? What are you imagining? For example, right now, are you thinking about your car? I doubt it. Unless your car is broken down or something's wrong with it, you're not thinking about it. Now, do you spend a lot of attention on things like your car or your clothes in your everyday life? Sure, but when you're busy doing something else, they are very far from your mind unless something is going wrong with them. Now let's go even bigger. So, did you think of your life goals? In a regular classroom scenario or in this weird one where I said pay attention, did your life goals appear to you? Did you think about what you want your life to be like, what you want yourself to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now? Did you think about why you were doing this? I hope, because I made it weird. I made this seem really strange. What am I doing in a classroom? Why am I taking this class? But that's usually a very rare phenomenon. It's rare that we think about, why am I doing this? What are my goals with this stuff? But if you did, good, right? Lastly, your death. In a normal classroom experience, are you thinking about your death? Maybe a couple of you, and this would be crazy, said, I'm thinking about my death all the time, right? And we would say, oh, that's weird. No, that's probably good. Because we don't think about these things. We don't think about our life goals. We don't think about our death, right? Because we're busy. We're doing a project. All right, demonstration number 2, right? We'll call this, what is this? And for what is this? Let's deal with this thing. You see it? This is, get out of the way, this is just my pen, right? So, it's a pen. So what is it? The they says, a pen. I'll tell you more about that later. But what is it really? What is this really? Like, get under it. What is this for real? Now, of course, some of you are saying, duh, it's a pen. Some of you are saying, it's something to write with. It's a tool. If you read Heidegger, and you should have tried at least once so far, you would say, it's a tool. Okay, but what is it really? Now, what some of you are doing when I ask that is you're probably getting really deep, but you're still going science. You're thinking Play-Doh. What is its essence? And you're thinking of molecules and plastics and what plastics are made from and how this is mostly just photons of motion and light and the forces of subatomic particles or something, right? Oh, it's just the reflection of light through a camera, right? Oh, fine. But what is it really? So I'm going to annoy you and make this thing last, right? I'm going to keep asking, what is it really? So what is this thing? What is it? What is it? Well, what is it before I picked it up? Before I brought it to the camera and brought it over there, what was it then? What was it to you? I know, this is weird. What is it when I do this? Or this? Now notice, we do not say it is a back scratcher, but I'm using it as a back scratcher. What is my pen when I am not using it? Well, then we can say it's just a pen. Maybe we can say it's barely anything. But what are things really? They are how they appear to us. I am not saying they metaphysically change. I am saying that we see the world as a series of tasks and tools. We see the world based on what our task is at the time. So when I have an itch on my back, this becomes a back scratcher. Fine, right? That's not what it is, but it's how it appears to us. All right, weird. Third metaphor. And now this one is going to require a lot of imagination. Got it? And this is good. Let's pretend that you are with me when I was young and cool, right? And we're going on a surf trip. Now, what we would do when we would do these surf trips is we would try to find somewhere really far out of the way so there was nobody. So let's say you are going with my buddy and we're going down to Baja, Mexico, and we're going to one of our secret spots. We have to drive over a mountain range off-road for like an hour, and there's very few people that know about this spot, so we're usually by ourselves. Now, what we normally do is we drive through the night so that we can wake up and have more time to surf. So we are arriving at secret spot right near the sand of the beach, and it's like 2 a.m. Now we want to quickly get some sleep. We'll probably wake up at 6, but we need to set up the tent really quick. Now, here's the problem. When you are a young surfer, you don't have camping equipment. I mean, you have a tent, but you don't have a separate set of camping equipment, so you always forget certain things. We would always remember the toilet paper and the can opener, but we would always forget to bring a hammer and bring a flashlight. Standard. It got to the point where we just got used to not having these things. All right, but we need to set up a tent, and it's dark. Good? Some of you are saying, well, why don't you sleep in the car? That sucks. We are so good at setting up a tent, even in the dark, that we can have it set up in a few minutes and get some really good sleep for 4 hours before we wake up. All right, so now you're with me. So we're in the dark and we're setting up a tent. Where should we put it? It's a really overcast sky, so the moonlight's not helping much, so where should we put our tent? We look around. Now, some of you are saying, oh, why don't you move the car and point the headlights? No, way too much trouble, right? We also don't want to use extra gas. We're in the middle of nowhere. We don't want to use the battery just in case it's low, right? So we don't want to go to that trouble, right? So what do? Easy. Use your feet. You don't need a flashlight. In fact, your feet work even better. What do? Just rub the ground all over, right, until you see some flat, soft ground. And this will even tell you if there's something really hard right under the surface. For instance, if you're shuffling around and you run and you poke at a rock, you can see, oh, can I simply move that rock, or is that a real problem? Okay, I won't go there. And so then all you do is you walk around. So if I'm with you, and I would make sure there's a good area that's flat and soft where my sleeping bag would go. If there's maybe a couple rocks over here, I'll just make sure that that's where your sleeping bag goes. And now we're fine. We swiped out a little area, and that's where the tent is going to go. Good. We didn't need a flashlight. We have our feet. All right. Now, problem. Secret spot is often windy, so we need to stake this tent down. And so I say to you, all right, hand me the hammer. Let me hammer in these stakes. Good. No hammer. What do? So now we need to hammer in these tent stakes. Now, they are little metal stakes, so you can't just use your hand or pat them in with your foot, right? It'll go through the bottom of your shoe. So what do? Easy. You are saying, go find a rock. Why? Right? You're telling me to go grab a rock, but that's not what I need. What do I need? I'm missing a hammer. So if you're looking for rocks, let's imagine you're looking around for rocks, right? And you look for a rock and then, oh wow, how weird, a hammer. You're telling me that if I found a hammer itself, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a rock. No, of course not. What you're looking for is a hammer. Are you likely to find a hammer out in the middle of Baja, Mexico? No, right? I told you this beach is almost completely vacant all the time, and so you're not going to find a hammer. So, but what are you looking for? You're looking for a hammer. What are you likely going to find? A rock. But what are you looking for? A hammer. All right. So now we find our first hammer. Good? Oh, it's really dark, but It's nice and hard. It's kind of round on one side, right? It's got a flat side, so I'll try to aim for that. Now, what do? Do I get out a chemistry set and test its mass, test its pH balance to see what it's made of? No, what do? What do I do when I have a task? I grab a tool and use the tool. So I go to use my first hammer and it breaks apart. That sucks, right? So wasn't strong enough, right? I tried to hammer with it and it broke apart immediately. It was like muddy or something, right? Maybe it was just a clod of dirt that was stuck together and it felt hard. Well, whatever. Now, what do I do when it breaks? Do I test it? No, of course not. I have a task. So I chuck the first hammer, right, and look for another one. I grab another hammer, right? Now, what if I find? Of course, I didn't find a hammer. I found another, I guess, rock. Good? I grab it. Ooh, this one feels heavy, a little sharp on the edges, right? But good. It's got a nice flat side. Good. Heavy. I use it, and it works really well. Because it's so heavy, right, it has a lot of force, and I can put in the hammer this way. Great. Good? Now, what do I do when I'm done with it? Unless I think I'm going to need it really soon, what do? I chuck it over there. Good? Now it's a rock again, right? It's not a hammer because I don't need a hammer. It's a rock, so throw it over there. Good. We're fine. I wake up the next morning, right, really early, and as I'm getting ready, I notice that there's blood all over me. What? Why is there blood all over me? Did I kill my comrades? Did I kill my fellow tent dwellers? No. And then I realize what happened, right? I go to the scene of the tent stakes, and what was my first hammer? Some of you psychos know what happened, right? Kind of round on one side and flat on the other. Oh, it was a turtle. I just massacred a turtle, right? Did I care at the time? No. I wanted a hammer. What did I do when I found out my turtle wasn't a hammer? I didn't investigate it. I just looked for another hammer. Oh, what did the second hammer turn out to be? Well, now where is the second hammer? I threw it in a bush somewhere. Well, what was it really? I didn't know at the time, but it was let's guess, a 384 carat diamond. And where is it now? In some bush in the middle of Mexico somewhere, right? Oh, maybe it was a part from the engine of a UFO. Where is it now? Doesn't matter, right? I was done with the hammer, so I chucked it. This is how we live our lives. So write notes. You should be writing notes all the time. Our life is setting up a tent in the dark. Do we care about our tools? Do we even look at them? No, right? Well, do we care about the hammer? No, right? It's a hammer. Do we care that it's a turtle? No, right? You terrible people, right? You use people the same way. Let's stop the weirdness and let's go into Heidegger a little bit, and then you'll want some weirdness again, so I'll give you a couple more demonstrations. Remember, the project here is to find being, to find the way the world actually appears that we've forgotten since Plato. Heidegger has to come up with a new approach, right? So part of the weirdness is he's doing a very different style of research. He is doing what he calls phenomenology, right? He got this from Husserl, but Husserl's no fun to read, right? He is doing a phenomenology of being and a phenomenology of being in the world. Now notice, when I write things this way, when I give it little hyphens, you also should give it those hyphens in your notes. I will write sentences that are grammatically incorrect on purpose. I will capitalize weird words, right? Please imitate the way I'm writing them because it's trying to show us something about what our language is doing. All right, so let's try to discover what phenomenology is. When I say the word phenomena, what do you think of? When you say that's phenomenal or what a phenomenon, think of what that usually means. We use the word in a way that's close to its meaning, but we use the word to mean something out of the ordinary. What does the word actually mean? It just means as things appear. A phenomena is something that appears to us, but of course we only notice what appears to us when it's out of the ordinary. If there's a bright light in the sky, we say, oh, what is that phenomena? But what we really mean is that's something that appeared, but it's out of the ordinary, so it really stood out. Well, logos, as I referred to when I was talking about the subjects of study, when I was talking about what is philosophy, logos is to study something or to give an account of it. So, phenomenology is a study of things as they actually appear. I know that sounds so basic, but please notice there are some very big distinctions between how we think of the world and the world as it actually appears. So Heidegger is trying to get us to see how the world appears, not just how we assume it, not just how we think about it, but as it actually appears to us, because we're trying to find being again. We are trying to not just pass it right over, but notice how the world is. So let's give a couple more corny demonstrations, right? First, let's try this one. Now, I am terrible at writing. You've seen some of my drawing, but let me try to write something and you simply tell me what it is. Good? All right, so here we go. Let's try this. Okay, sorry, right? I'm very bad at writing and I get really hyper. So, what is that? Good? Easy. What's wrong? Oh, sorry. Here, dang, I don't know if I can fix it, right? I don't have another paper. Now, right now, you're having a hard time because you're wondering, did Jeff mean to write a B or did he mean to write a 13? What is this really? Well, there's the problem. The problem is what this really is and how it appears to you are two different things. Is this a B? No. Is it a 13? No. We see the world not as it is. We see the world as we assume it's going to be. We have what's called intentional perception. We're intending some meaning based on what we're doing. Now, because of all my earlier metaphors about what is a pen and setting up a tent in the dark, you really don't know what the project is right now, so you have a really hard time interpreting it. Now, of course, if I gave you a different context and a different project, you would understand this without even having to think much about it. Okay, let's try. Let's say this is another one of your classes, right? And now you are a terrible student, so you failed English and math a bunch of times, right, just for fun. And so you're in a class, let's say your class is getting comfortable with capitals and lower cases, right? This is English 0001A, having fun with capitals and lower cases. Wow, you're bad at English. Good? So if you're in that class and the teacher writes this on the board, what do you know it is, right? If you said B, you're going to have to retake the class. Capitals and lower cases. It's a capital B. In that class, no matter how terribly that teacher wrote that, you would know that that's some terrible writing, but that is clearly a capital B. Now you're in math class. And again, you are so bad at math that they sent you back to fun with whole numbers, right? Math 001A. And no matter how bad I write that in that math class, what is that? That's clearly a 13, no matter how bad the writing is, because you know the project. But now let's give you different classes. What if this is art class? Well, now you're open to a lot of different interpretations. What if this is Freudian psychology class and learning how to psychoanalyze Rorschach tests? Right, those are those ink blots. Well, now it could be anything. Good? If this is an art class, that could be a symbol or a metaphor or an abstraction. Freudian psychology class, now what are you seeing? Are you seeing a pregnant woman? Are you seeing boobs? Right? A butt? Right? Sorry. Now, philosophy, you don't know what to expect, so it was a little harder to decide what it is. But notice, we don't just see the world. We see a world that appears to us because of what our tasks are, what our intentions are. And try another one. What is this? Beep, beep, beep. What is that? Truck backing up, microwaves done, alarm clock, right? No, it's me beeping, right? Why do you immediately go to trucks backing up? It's because that's how the world normally is. Teachers don't beep, clocks beep. So even if a teacher beeps, we're not just going to hear. Now notice this distinction. We're not just going to hear a noise. We're going to hear a sound that comes from something. We are always interpreting the meaning of things and their causes. So when we hear a beep, notice, Have you ever been misled by a barking sound, right? I remember once I was walking and I heard this barking and I was like, oh, where's a dog? Turned out to be a frog. It was really fascinating, but I'm looking for a dog because I don't just hear noise, I hear barking. Because when I hear something, I always interpret what it is, and that's how the world appears to us. It appears to us as things that make sense. We don't see the world, we interpret the world. So, what is the world that appears to us? Not scribbles, right? Not ink with some curvy lines and a straight one. What appears to us are B's and 13s. That's how the world appears. And so that's what Heidegger is trying to get us to see, the world as it actually appears to us.